In the last 24 hours, many people, some of whom I know, especially in Hawaii, were forced to use their vehicles to bug out to high ground because there was a tsunami inbound. So they ended up in gridlock in their vehicles. In a lot of cases, it took them hours to get where they were trying to go. If you were in a similar situation, what would you do? Hopefully, you've planned ahead. And so today's video is just about that. I have a truck bag here, and we're going to go over what's in it, and I'm going to take it for a small hike. Then I'm going to head back to the house, show you guys actually what is in it, and dissect the mentality behind the why and how of how we get that done. It's going to open up some doors for you, I hope, so stick around. So we're a little ways down the trail, and it is just about dusk, which I could have told you that based on the amount of mosquitoes that are swarming me right now. Situational awareness is super important. So I was setting up this this deal that I have. It's just a piece of Velcro that I put on the trunk of a tree in a lot of cases to create, so I don't have to carry a whole tripod around and things. I was standing in an ant bed here pretty good and got lit up for a minute there. So you missed that. It wasn't recorded, but yeah, they've been lighting me up, crawling up my leg and everything. It's crazy. So yeah, at dusk, this is not an ideal time of day to travel. You really need to start thinking about where you're going to bed down for the night. If you're in a situation where you have to leave your vehicle and you got to get somewhere, you got to make some miles, and you're not going to stop for the night, that's fine. But if you're going to, this is the time of night where you need to start thinking about what that's going to look like, what your capacity, what your capability is to get that job done. Also traveling around, like I said, bugs are going to be getting at you. You're going to be in failing light, and you want to be trying to set that up, especially if set that up after dark, especially if you're in a situation where you need to maintain some level of let's say being covert. So if you're trying to be on the sneak and not lead on to anybody and not give off a position to anybody, then you need to factor that into your planning stage and just how quickly you move toward getting your shelter system set up for the evening. Now, if you're traveling in a group of people, say you have 3 to 4 people in the vehicle, now you need to think about outfitting all of you guys. Is one of you going to continue on and try to get to your friend's house, your secondary location? If you're traveling back home, whatever the situation is, how are you going to plan that into, it's becoming nightfall? So it's not just the bad situation, but now it's going to be combined by, did somebody get hurt during the event that made us, to where now we have to worry about leaving our vehicle? Was there a car accident and our vehicle is disabled? Did we have a catastrophic mechanical malfunction and we're in a remote area? What it is that brought us to this situation is going to play into, the way that we're going to respond to it, but it's also, a factor of the daytime and what our capabilities are. So just having a bag is going to open up capabilities. Now, we'll see when I dissect what's in the kit, but basically, I don't have a full bottle of water because to store that, I could do that, but if it's in the vehicle for a long time, now I have ways like keeping a silver coin in there that would help keep that for longer, and it would be pure water still, but I don't like to store water for long periods of time and have it slosh around the car and all that. So factor that in. If you need to have water because you're going out into a desert area or an area where you cannot get a water resupply via filter or purification, then you need to have a way to keep that water in your car. So that's an extra layer of what you need to do. So different things that you have to think about for your location, the area that you're traveling through, and then also obviously the time of day and things like that. So just a quick note on that stuff. I'm going to go ahead and make some more mileage here. And then, like I said, I'm going to head back to the house, break out the kit, show you what all is in it, and talk more about the methodology here. And try to kill some more ants and get them off my leg. So, all right. So I was recently going through organizing some things around the house and came across several bags that I wanted to get out of my way, out of closets, and create space. Came across I had like a couple of these type of bags, and I thought, why not go ahead and make these into truck bags or something like that. So that's exactly what I did. I had plenty of gear that I've collected over the years. I thought, let me not let these bags go in storage. Let me put them somewhere where they're going to be used and not wasted. Otherwise, I might as well just get rid of them. In doing that, I had these two 511 bags. Now, one of them is going to go in the wife's vehicle, more or less the family vehicle. This one's going to go into my personal vehicle. Now, what you could do for the truck bag concept is you could just take what gear is your primary, loadout and gear, and have that just staged in your vehicle. The only problem with that is that may consist of a lot more weight and a lot more comfort items or things that you don't necessarily need for what we're talking about. Basically, if you had to abandon your vehicle because it was disabled or whatever happened, and you just needed some stuff to get you through for the duration until you could find your way to rescue or to a friend's house or a safe place or maybe back home. So does it have to be a tactical bag? No. Some people would even disagree with it looking tactical at all. This just happens to be what I had laying around. If you have something that's more civilian looking or more friendly looking, maybe a lighter color, and you're not worried about being in a concealed type situation or a permissive, non-permissive situation, then maybe you have a different bag that would be appropriate, maybe even lighter weight than this. So let's overview the bag, but this is not about selling 511 bags or anything like that. Just know this is something I've had laying around for many years that was going unused. So that's why we selected this particular bag. Again, if you have something else that you prefer, go with that. I don't care what the bag is. This is about the concept, not about the gear. Okay. So let's get into it. What is this bag? How does it work? How did I utilize it? So let's talk about the outside and work our way in. So it has a couple of outside pouches. You have the larger one here, and then the smaller, quicker access here, and then you have one on top, like a sunglass, soft material, plush material there. Then we have the harness or straps along with a pack frame, right? This does not have the chest strap, but I'm actually going to make one. At some point, I'm going to go ahead and sew one that would go around, one side, clip, and go around the other side. So I just need to sew that. Probably take me 15 minutes, no big deal. But at a certain point along the line, that's what you end up with when you have multiple bags and you scavenge one off of, you scavenge something and pillage it, and the next thing you know, you don't have it when you decide to use this bag the next time. So now we're creating things. The other thing is I took an old rigger's belt and I placed it on here. Whether or not I would actually need that, I may end up taking this off. I just hiked around with this bag and it didn't feel like I really needed to take the weight and distribute it to my hips. It felt like just having the harness was adequate. So because of the weight of this, I may just go ahead and remove this. One of the reasons why I wanted to leave this on was because with a belt knife, which is actually I have a belt knife packed in here, you may want an actual belt to put it on. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I had this. Now I may just take this off and put it inside so it's not kind of in my way, but it does have, a way to put some weight on your hips versus just putting it all on your shoulders and your back. So depending on your physicalities, that may or may not come into play. So that's the outside. Let's get into what we have. So quick access stuff, things that you might want to get to right away or things that may come into play pretty early in the game or that you may need fast access to. This is something that I regularly would be wearing, or maybe if I was going somewhere and I was caught out and I didn't have this on me because it wasn't a planned outing, I would have a bright colored bandana. If you know about bandanas, handkerchiefs, spare clothing and cloth items, this is going to come in handy for signaling. This is going to be usable as a pot holder. This is going to have, first aid applications, signaling applications, being that it's bright. So a multitude of different purposes that this can yield for our capabilities. So I'm going to set that aside. I'm sure you know about handkerchiefs and what they're capable of, and bandanas. Secondly, one of the most overlooked items in all of survival and prepping and all of that, people don't talk about teepee. You probably remember from COVID that was a pretty quick issue for a lot of people. They were worried about, how am I going to do the duty and wipe up and get clean? So when you talk about that, you also need to talk about hygiene, which is one of our 8 needs. So quick overview, whenever I talk about gear or preparing for survival or anything like that, I usually approach it from the idea of the 8 needs. So 8 needs: food, water, shelter, fire, navigation, signaling, first aid, which is also medical, and then protection being the 8th need. So this falls under medical. Hygiene is part of that for my purposes. So keep hygiene, keep clean, and avoid disease, right? Set that aside. So you're going to want to have quick access to that at times. A couple other quick items. What do we got here? And that is all that is in this outside pouch here. So signaling, this could be used if you needed to make an aerial signal. If you're familiar with this, if you're a military type kid or guy, you have one of these guys. This is a chem light. You get one of these bad boys and put it on a string, which I have plenty of string in my kit bag here, which we'll see some of here in a few minutes. This says it's white in color. This goes for 8 hours, supposedly. Now, obviously, these chem lights, you take them out of the package, you crack them to break them open, and then you can put it on a string and do the helicopter deal to aerial signal, or you can string this up in a tree and illuminate your way back from your bathroom spot if you're in a stationary type situation. This isn't here because it is something that needs to be quickly accessed. It was just easier to put it into a small pouch on the outside to access this. But obviously, some first aid applications here, as well as some fire starting. I had shown in a previous video how this can be used to start some different fire making materials. Very effective if you know what you're doing and you give it a little bit of practice. So that's that guy. Very inexpensive items. Next we have a signal mirror. So this guy is awesome. It's got some instructions on there. It has a crosshairs there, and then it has a case to keep it nice, and it's plush inside, so it's not going to get all scuffed up. Now, this is an acrylic one, but the beauty of acrylic is when it's getting bounced around in a pack, your pack's getting thrown around, it's in the vehicle, maybe you hit the brakes pretty hard, the bag goes flying, or you don't have it secured right, or whatever it is. This is prone to breakage because it's not as good quality as maybe a glass mirror, but it is good enough where it's not going to crack and stuff because it is acrylic. So, but it is just more prone to scratchage. Okay, so we'll set that bad boy aside. What else do we have? So in this part, in the larger outside part of our pack, what do we have? So one of our primary needs, not one of the things that we need to worry about immediately, but I have a couple of Cliff Bars. So pick whatever's appropriate for you. If you have other food needs or things that you would like for little trail snacks, those would come in handy for like a 24-hour get you through type thing. So open up this pouch all the way. I have a head net here. I actually have 2 of them. And here's the thought process. I don't need 2 head nets, right? But if I'm out with family, this gives 2 of the 3 of my family members a way to keep bugs at bay. The other one's going to have to suffer if they're in the car. If they're not, and it's just me and the wife, then we're all set. Just out of this one bag, I have capability for food for 2 for a day, which that's not nearly enough calories. These are however many calories they are. 250 calories, so that's about 10% of what you'd want for the day. But that'll get you through for a little while, put something in your stomach. As far as these head nets, these are cheapo ones, got them off Amazon, whatever, it doesn't matter. But that's going to give you under the protection category some of what you'd want, because life can be hell if you're trying to sleep in the woods and you haven't thought about how you're going to keep those bad boys out of your ears, out of your mouth, out of your nose, keep them off of your face from biting you while you're trying to sleep. If you know, you know. So that's that. So under the protection category, what's next in here? So we have cordage. Now, this isn't just any old cordage. These are selected very specifically for their capability and what they do. So we have 25 feet of both of these guys and 15 feet of this because of size and weight savings. So this is I believe, 2,500 pound brake strength. What is this stuff called? This is used in the utility sector, the industries. So this is used to pull wire and cable like fiber optics and stuff through underground lines. Mule tape. It's called mule tape. So this is, I think, 5/8 or ½ inch or whatever it is, 15 feet of that. Now that can come into play for, stringing up or lashing a shelter, or I use this on my hammocks a lot because it is a wider tape type cordage. So it's not going to wring out a tree as easily, so people don't get freaking out about, hey, he's stringing up a hammock and he's going to wring a tree, which could potentially kill a tree. I have yet to see any trees die from me having done that. Then we have these two types of cordage. So this is like a nylon or polyester or whatever type. It has some stretch to it, but it's not as likely to break. It has very high break strength. Then you have these two guys. I want to say this is 500 pounds or 550 pounds, very similar to what you would get out of the capability of 550 cord. But this is, let me see if I can remember this right, high molecular weight polyethylene, HWMPE or something like that. So this is arbor line. So this is used for tree work. You would throw this up in a tree, if you were going to cut down a branch or whatnot, and then you would throw, maybe a thicker line using this to pull that thicker line up, or you might be able to just get away with using this guy as your primary line, depending on, what you needed to do. So beauty of this is it's very abrasion resistant, whereas this is not. This has different capabilities. This is abrasion resistant, albeit it has less break strength, but it still has pretty good break strength. The diameter is less than 2 millimeters. I think it's like 1 point something millimeters, not very thick at all. So you can carry a lot of this and it weighs next to nothing. Now that's going to be a theme, is I like to carry lightweight things that don't take up a large footprint in these bags. Now with this guy, that's going to give me just that. So 25 feet of this is UV protected or, resistant. And it's also good in like wet weather. So this is, it could slip, like the knots might slip on you a little bit using this because it is a little bit like wax-like. It doesn't actually have wax, but it's kind of waxy feeling. So it may give you some slip if you try to tie a certain kind of knot. So just be careful of what you're tying. Next we have, I believe this is a 2 or 2.2 millimeter Kevlar cord. Now this is thermal resistant. So if you were going to use a tripod and do some cooking out in the bush, and you wanted to use this for that purpose, or this has some thermal resistant capabilities, basically is what I'm getting at. Some people have used this. I've actually tried to cut through some limbs. You could, in theory, cut through, wrist thick branches to create some firewood or erect a shelter if you had to, but I prefer to use a saw for that. So that's that guy there. And we'll get more into shelter building as we continue through talking about this process. All right, so we're going to set those aside. Set these off to the side over here. And keep this little area clear to where we can continue to go through our bag. So next up, what do we have? Because I am concerned about keeping my head from burning, and because it helps you maybe be a little bit concealed, have a hat. Now this is just a civilian hat. If you were worried about having something in a non-permissive situation or a stealth type situation, maybe select different gear that would be camouflage, or maybe something that's not camouflage, but that's really up to what you think your situation would end up being. Next up, what do we got? Cool guy stuff. So we've got a grab bag. We grab this out of our main pack. It gives us access to some first aid stuff. Now this is not a comprehensive boo-boo kit or blowout kit or IFAC or nothing like that. This is a cheap little, typical problems that you're going to run into. Now I do have other items that are multi-purpose that I could, like I mentioned, I could bring this into the equation because it's multi-purpose. This would be adequate in a lot of cases to augment your first aid kit. But things are often overlooked, like we talked about with first aid, alcohol pads and hygiene and stuff like that, and TP. One of the other things that's primarily overlooked is going to be your foot care. So having something like moleskin where you can address heat, hot spots on your feet or even blisters after they've either burst or they're on the verge of bursting, moleskin is going to be your best friend, because if you've got miles to make, and that's kind of the idea behind this, is this kit would give you the ability to go through miles, then you have something for that. Additionally, you have some stretchy self-adherent ace bandage type. This is what you would use if maybe you got blood work done and stuff like that. This sticks to itself. This is a good bandaging material. We have a small amount of gauze. I'd probably add another at least one or maybe even two more of these, because they're so lightweight and they take up a very small footprint. But this could be a crucial item to have if you need to use this as the primary bandage so that you're soaking up blood and cushioning something. You might want to have some other ones to wrap around that and then follow up. Now, I will preface that with having used this kind of stuff on multiple occasions. This is relatively waterproof, which is good if you're trying to keep a lot of nasties out, but it's going to give you a problem if you want the wound, depending on the type of wound, if it's an abrasion. Because if you have the capability of making fire or something like that, and you need that wound that you've created by, a mishap, if you needed to allow something to breathe, but you didn't want it to necessarily be, you didn't want the skin to be damp at all times, then think about which type of bandage or dressing you're utilizing. And then lastly, we have now this is a trimmed down one, but this is the self-adhesing Velcro one. Now, these are ones I've had trouble finding lately, so I just threw this one in the kit because I had it laying around. This one, as you can see, it doesn't have much stretch left, so I'm in the replacement process now for this. When I get a couple of new ones, I'm going to throw at least one more of these in. But an ace bandage for mechanical injuries, twists. Again, if your primary effort and purpose in making a bag like this is that you're going to be hoofing it, you're going to be on the hike, on the hump, and using your feet, then you may have to think primarily about foot care and what injuries you may sustain, twisted ankles, or if you need to support your ankle or your knee or something from a prior injury. These are things that you need to consider. Now, a lot of this kit is built out based on my skill level in my locale and my climate and the way that I operate. So you may have way different things. You may say, no, this is a comfort item. You don't need this. That's stupid. You don't need that. Hey, man, you do you. I don't care. Now, other things. Let's talk about water. Set all that aside. Talk about water for a minute. Okay, so with water, we have our old standby. This one happens to be titanium. Does yours have to be titanium? Obviously not. But this is at least 32 ounces, if not 40 ounces. This is 1,000 milliliters. This is a great container for if you needed to just boil. If your only concern was biological, contaminants in your water, this guy is going to take care of that, but it depends on your capability of having fire. Now, in a less than permissive situation, fire may not be an option for you. If you're not worried about that and you're just worried about, I'm going to have a bad night in the woods because a car broke down, or I was stranded on the side of a remote area on a road or whatever, and I'm waiting for somebody to come along. Hopefully you've put the water actually in there and you have it just staged in the pack. That would add maybe an extra pound or two. Not a big deal, because it's going to give you that hydration that you're going to desperately need if you're in some situations. If not, like I kept this empty because in my area, I have water everywhere, but I do need to worry about, filtration and purification. Now, this Delta emergency water filter is from Delta, and you can find these on Amazon. They're about $25. I have reviewed this previously, so I won't go into too much depth, but basically this does all of these things. Now, it's probably not going to show up in camera very well, but again, I had talked about this before. This does industrial chemicals. This takes care of bacteria, viruses, parasites, protozoa, all kinds of pesticides and herbicides, a lot of different things like chlorine, sulfite, all kinds of stuff. So this is going to get out a lot of things that, something like a Grail or some of your other store-bought filters would do. The win on this is that each of the filters, the paper filters that it comes with, is good for 75 gallons. And there's 2 of them in this. So if you wanted to field strip this and just put this in like a small Ziploc bag, you could take the two components and ditch the third one and ditch all this packaging, and this would lighten up your load a little bit, but it would also give you plenty of disinfectant ability for your water. Then you would take this, set it on there. It's a cone. Like if you watched my previous video, you set it on there, pour the water down into your container. Now you're mobile and you're good to go. This, for me, was a win because instead of carrying my primary stuff that I have in another bag, this opened up a door where I still have the ability to boil or to filter and purify, because filtering is different than purifying, but in this case it does purifying. It's kind of a weird dynamic, but this does so much that it basically takes care of biological and chemical, versus only biological if you were to boil. That does nothing for chemicals for the most part. So filtering, purifying, and boiling if necessary. So I have multiple ways to take care of my water need. All right. We'll set that back there. Let's talk about more on shelter. So we have a couple of items here, and we are actually wrapping up. We have just a couple small items to talk about. So we have spare socks. Again, one of the most underrated things, foot care. So spare socks. Now these are wool. These happen to be darn tough, but I have several different, types and things like that of wool socks. But these have a lot of cushion in the heel, cushion in the toe. That's going to help you avoid blisters. These have like over 65%, if I remember right. These are like the ones made more or less for the military. T4021s. They make a few different kinds like this in different colors. I think they have tan, green, or black. These are the medium, I think, crew or hiker size ones. But nonetheless, these guys are good to go. I've been wearing them for years, and one pair of these lasts a very long time. They go through the wash. They don't degrade. They don't fall apart like cotton, and they don't give you hot spots like cotton per se. All right, so spare socks, awesome. Now this is a bit of a luxury item, but a hammock, because if you're like me, you have back issues, you don't want to sleep on the ground with all the ants, like I got tore up earlier with ants. Get up off the ground, get away from anything that's on the ground. If you can do that and it doesn't weigh a lot, like this one is a cheaper Kijaro. Now, Amazon hasn't been selling this. I own like 2 of these. I'd like to own like 4 of these or more. But these were at the time, I think like $25 or $30. Well worth it. They're, very lightweight material, packed down very small. And so for the size and weight of this, if I can get away with that, I'm okay with having, the capability of having shelter in that way, because that opens a whole new world of having a comfort item that is going to get me through a good night's sleep versus just a bad night's sleep. So trash bag, if you know, you know. So these guys, this is a thicker, whatever mill trash bag, like a lawn bag or a contractor bag. This guy is going to open up a door for you in the way of a ground, like a moisture barrier on the ground, or you can fill this with some leaf litter and debris off of the ground. Just avoid sticks so you don't poke it. Create yourself a little bit of a mattress. Maybe put that underneath you in the hammock, or if we're going to ground sleep because you were in a situation where you needed to, this could be your mattress. Then in combination with either of those, and you have a tarp here, which already has cordage attached to it. So I'm not tapping into my reserves of cordage in order to utilize this bad boy here. So I have plenty of cordage already built into that. Now this is the heaviest item besides maybe my water had it been full. This is a necessary thing if it's a certain time of year. Now in Florida we have pretty bad rain. You're not going to sleep at all if you're getting rained on. So in my experience, now this is an old one. You're probably not going to be able to find a blue field on the internet anymore if you're looking and following along and taking notes. This guy is probably not available anymore, but nonetheless, something that is, I would say the size of a poncho, like a standard military poncho, maybe like 7x5 or something along those lines would be my minimum. I think this guy's like a 7x5 or something like that, similar to that. Maybe like 6x6, 7x7, I don't know. But yeah, this guy has served me well over the years, and it is not my primary. None of this is my primary stuff, guys. Again, don't get so tied up on it has to be this or it doesn't work or whatever. This is an improvised loadout. So these are things I had laying around that I said, you know what, let's make a bag. This stuff works. It's tried. It's true. I know it's going to work for me. And so that's why it's included here. Now, I, on a daily basis, as part of my base level kit, and again, this is all in addition to what I would have as my, EDC carry, everyday carry, things that I already carry on a daily basis, no matter where I go, where I'm allowed, I will be carrying things like a knife and my final category, which is protection. Protection, I'm not going to talk about in too much depth, but I do carry things for self-protection that would come into play and be really handy. I think there's actually there's a few more items in here. I do have a Mylar blanket in the way of shelter, so I won't blind you with that, but that's a blanket. Obviously, that's for shelter, and everybody knows about Mylar blankets. Then we have, I'm just going to go ahead and dump this net bag. Now, I like net bags because you can see what's in them and inventory your stuff and find things without having to dig around and things getting lost in there. But I'm just going to go ahead and dump this out and kind of show you. Now, we talked about protection and bugs and things like that. Now, if you've got to discharge a firearm or you have the time to wear hearing protection, wear hearing protection. If you don't, and this is just for bugs, well, it is what it is. You wear these at night to avoid bugs. If you're in a situation where you need to be situationally aware, then obviously you're not going to wear these. You're going to suck up the fact that you got to hear the bugs, or maybe they're getting in your ears or whatever, because you need to be on watch and paying attention to what's going on around you. So those are very specific for specific situations. A little bit of cordage. Now, we haven't talked too much about fire yet, but this is part of the fire kit that we have in combination with the knife. Now, I normally carry a knife on me, but this would be for the other person, the other passenger, or my wife who doesn't carry a knife in the way that I do, in the fashion that I do. This would be their knife, their primary tool. On this, there is a Leatherman. Now, this is the Super Tool 300. Doesn't matter. Any old Leatherman with a knife and a saw is what I would tell you to primarily focus on. Has a pretty significant knife on there. I think that's like a 3-inch. You got a file, and then I've actually modified this blade here. This would be your serrated blade, but I made it a second straight edge because I don't like serrated stuff for my purposes. And then the saw. Now, the saw is going to open up what we can use it for on making our shelter. Utilizing things off the landscape like sticks and things like that. A ferro rod. This guy is like a 3-inch ferro rod by a 1/4 inch or whatever it is. Doesn't matter. I can use either the back edge of my knife or my saw back on that super tool to scrape that ferro rod in combination with using this twine here. This is natural jute or twine. This is going to accept a spark. So when you fluff this up, break it down, fluff it up, that's going to be very usable with just a spark. Then a flashlight. I don't have a spare battery, so it is what it is. This is just a spare knife that I had laying around. This is a modified boning knife. This is an old hickory made by Ontario Knives or Knife Company. This guy is awesome, super duper sharp, and it'll definitely get the job done. This is a carbon knife, so being that it's in storage, you've got to make sure that you're not retaining moisture in your sheath, because it will rust, and then when you need it, it's going to be a rusty object, and you don't want to be working food or anything like that with it. For the fire, you're probably wondering what's in here. This is obviously a beeswax candle. Beeswax is superior to paraffin wax because you can use it for lip balm. You can use this for waxing zippers. Well, I guess you could with any kind of wax, but with this, the hot point on the heat of this is going to, it's a more dense fat or wax, and so it's going to last much longer than other more relaxed waxes like paraffin and things like that your typical household candles are made out of. This one is going to emit a nice scent and not be something that's super perfumey, but it's natural. So I really like beeswax. This thing is going to last twice as long as your standard, tea light candle. So with that being said, that's that guy there. Obviously a Bic. and this thing is an old standby. I purposely select bright colors. It could be yellow, bright green, orange, or red. I steer away these days from things like maybe gray, brown, green, things like that, because I don't want to lose this. So this guy's pretty much brand new. So signaling, we have 2 whistles. Now, one for each person in the car. So you'll find that running theme that I try to consider the needs of any other passengers that I have. This is going to open up one person, not blowing up their eardrum, blowing out their eardrums, or, if you need to separate and both of you have a whistle and one of you becomes separated from the other one, you can just signal. Or if we're trying to signal for rescue, this opens up that capability. Navigation. One of the more overlooked things in survival and prepping is travel. Whenever you have to leave a vehicle, you're going to need to probably take routes that are less than ideal. This is going to give you the ability to, travel in unexpected ways, but it's also something that I talk about extensively for the need of travel and navigation. One of our 8 needs is travel and navigation. One of my frustrations is that people often will talk about sheltering in place, but they fail to realize that what happens when you shelter in place so long and you're not rescued, outside of that, first 24 hours, if you're realizing that they simply, your rescuer, search and rescue cannot find you, well, maybe it's time to start thinking about where your resources are going to come from, because now you're in a situation where you need water, and maybe you were at a place where that wasn't a capability you had of gathering water, purifying water, filtering water. Now it's time to travel. How do you do that? Well, that's what this opens up for you, as well as if you have to go ahead and self-rescue and get out of the area entirely because you don't have resources there, or it's sketchy and you need to get out of there. A lot of different situations need to be considered. This is going to open the door for now. That this guy is a Suunto M9, and it is more or less a reference compass. You can shoot an azimuth and do that stuff with it, but it's not a base plate compass. This guy is just a basic, we're one of these daily basis as well, right? Just gives you kind of a reference for, hey, I know the area of operation that I'm in. I know that I need to book it whichever cardinal direction. This is going to verify for me that I'm working in that direction. It does go to shoot a bearing consistently north. One of the things on the navigation that I meant to put into this kit that I'm going to have to follow up with is to put a needle, just a sewing needle in this kit, and stash that away somewhere, maybe on this knife kit here. One of the ways that we can magnetize a needle is by stroking it across, take the point of the needle and stroke it across your carbon steel knife. And that's one of the reasons why I selected a carbon steel knife specifically. Now, can you do it with stainless? Possibly, but I've only done it with carbon steel, which may work a little bit better for magnetizing a needle, and then drop that into, you've probably seen 100 different times people have demonstrated that. Drop that onto something in water like a leaf or a bottle cap or something like that will float, and let that adjust and it'll point north. So that is a capability that you have. More first aid stuff. So for nicks and cuts, super glue does wonders. If you've never heard of this, you've been missing out. It stings a little, but it works. You put a small coat of that, like New Skin, that store-bought like bandage type chemical. This basically, I've heard rumors of this being developed in wartime as, a wound closure. And this has worked for me on several different occasions where I was bleeding adequately enough where I needed to go ahead and apply something like this, and it does work. So for modest wounds, this will come through. Obviously, if you have something more than like a moderate laceration, then you need to think about bandaging it up with your other implements and stopping the bleeding, and then maybe you can follow up with this down the line. But for your basic, like, hey, I nicked my finger, that's going to help you out a lot and keep you in the game where you can still affect survival. So wrapping up here, I think this might be the last item. This is they have these at like dollar stores and things. This one is something, it's going to have multiple different types all in one, multiple different types of medications. So this guy has Benadryl, like ibuprofen, Advil, and then Pepto-Bismol. And those are my three primary things. Now, for you, if you have daily medications that you need to think about those and pack those appropriately. If that means that you have to carry more or less, then fine, you do you. But this is something you don't want to overlook, is your medications or things that can get you through. So I've got stuff for, stomach irritation. If you had water that wasn't appropriately, if you failed to do your job on purification of water, now you've got something to help you out with the tummy bugs. And then you have stuff for pain if you've suffered an injury leading up to the situation that you now find yourself in. Or you've got something for, you're out there and you came across, on your hike, something that gave you a rash, or maybe you walked into something where there was stinging insects. So, yeah, this was a long-winded breakdown of what is in a truck bag. Now, guys, again, this is a truck bag. This is somewhat improvised. This is not a dedicated, like I'm going out camping type of kit, but this does contain most of what I would have if I was going out in certain times of the year in my environment, and it really opens up the doors with, I did not weigh this yet, but I mean, just you can probably tell how much all of this weighs. I mean, this thing probably weighs 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds. This guy is probably another pound or so. If this were full, now this is titanium, so it's very lightweight. This is probably 1/4 pound here at most. And then filled up, it might be 2 pounds. So you're talking, when you add all of this together, this is a sub well under 10 pounds. This is probably, somewhere in the 6, maybe at most 6.5, 7 pounds by the time you add the Leatherman and whatever in there. So wet weight, you're talking sub 10 pounds. Guys, that's pretty good. You're going to forget, and I did take this out and hike with it a little bit, you are going to forget that you're even wearing this pack, which is exactly what you want. So with all that said, in addition to what I carry on my person on a daily basis, this is a game changer for, if you find yourself in a bad situation and need to get out of your vehicle and now you're stuck hoofing it somewhere. So I hope this has helped give you guys a general idea of what can be placed into a bag with modest weight, modest size. This bag is actually too big for what I need. It's way bigger than what I need, and the bag itself is heavier than I need. I may adjust that down the road, but for now, this is what I've got. And shoot me a text, give me a like, let me know, share this with somebody, let me know what you guys think as far as what you would add, what you would take away, and yeah, so thanks for watching, and I apologize for it being super long-winded, but I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next one.